Namaskar, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and listening, and thank you to the organisers for the opportunity to share more about Keaton. I'm really excited about this presentation today, and it's been wonderful watching. It's been wonderful watching previous presentations, and I just got so much out of all of them, all really different and so incredibly interesting and resourceful and inspiring and deepening. So again, thank you for watching. I'd like to start with a short kirtan. It's a kirtan from Ra. So where I'm at the moment, I'm at Ananda Bharati, their mass unit in Ireland, and with me is Didi Anandaprama. I'd like to start with just saying that this is really good for me to be able to do this, because I'm putting a course together, and I really hope that this will develop into something that's ongoing. So I'd like to start just with a short story about my personal contact with Baba, which I had in Jamaica. And when I left New Zealand, not realising that Baba was going to be in Jamaica. I don't think anyone knew Baba was actually going to go to Jamaica. And I'd been at Los Angeles. I was on my way to England, and I'd been to Los Angeles just for a couple of weeks, and then we got the news that Baba was going to go to Jamaica. So I hopped on the plane, and literally I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone from New York sector, and no one really knew me. But I felt felt incredible excitement and deep inspiration and deep love on arrival. And I remember the first time seeing Baba. He was very enigmatic. I'd been a Māori already 5 years, and I'd actually never seen a photo of Baba's body, a physical body, just of his face. So I was really surprised. Baba was quite short, and he was dressed all in white, very mystical, but strange at the same time. Anyway, at first I was surprised. I couldn't really relate to Baba's physical being. I don't know, it was a very strange experience. But that soon changed, and after just a couple of days, I became this insane person, just running after Baba like a maniac, and following him wherever I could, and playing kirtan for him and so forth. But I remember the PC. I was sitting in the darshan hall, and Didi Anandaprama was there, and she was beckoning sisters to come out the back. I had no idea why she was doing that. I really didn't, and yet I just felt incredibly drawn to go. So I did. I followed them down to Baba's place where Baba was staying, and So I was in a line of sisters, and wasn't a very large group. I think maybe 12 or so of sisters there waiting for Baba's personal contact. So when it was my turn, I went in there, and Baba was sitting there smiling, and he asked me, "What's my name?" And at that time, my name was Jyoti, and he said, "Oh, effulgence." And then he said, "And what's your duty?" And I said, HPMGL, Baba, and which is the trade, which is a kirtan trade. And so then, just as I said that, Baba puts his hands like this, and he starts playing like he's playing the guitar, and he's smiling and he's laughing, and I just got this incredible sense of his joy and he was in his pleasure at. He was not laughing at me; he was laughing with me. He was just so much joy and just so much bliss, and then he gave me his blessing and touched my head and he gave me his blessing, and I went out, and for about 2 weeks after that I was just very blissful, very, very blissful state. But that experience just gave me so much feeling, incredible feeling of bliss and inspiration. And I just knew that this was my duty. This is my duty in Nandamaga. And after spending years running after Baba, first 15 years of my Māori life running after Baba, until Baba left his body, I was just, my whole life revolved around when would I see Baba next, and basically his mission, his programs, and my sadhana and stuff. It was a very intense and very blissful experience. Then after that happened, after Baba left his body, I decided that I needed to get a career. The thing what I really wanted to pursue was Prabhat Sangeet. But at that time, so I went on to finish my bachelor's degree, and then went on to do my master's. I really wanted to do Prabhat Sangeet, but that wasn't possible in those days because it wasn't recognised. So I ended up doing the music culture of Ra, and I'm so grateful to Baba to have done that, because I did study Prabhat Sangeet in an indirect way, because many of the genres that Baba has in his Prabhat Sangeet are in Ra. So I found out about it more intimately. I found out more things about Prabhat Sangeet than I could have in any other way, so I was very grateful for that. But then going on to do, the thing that happened to me was in 2000, I went with a group of students. I was working at the University of Auckland. I went with a group of students to make a documentary on the Shiva Gajan. And the very last thing we actually did was to have the experience of seeing a Rari Kirtan, traditional Rari Kirtan performance. I had no expectations of what that would be like, none at all, because I'd only seen in Ra, I'd seen individual singers, Kirtan singers, but I'd never seen a group. So that experience, as I said, it was totally unexpected. That experience totally transformed my life. I saw this group of brothers dancing kirtan, and I had never seen or experienced anything like that. And for a split second, I understood intuitively what Baba was talking about when he says kirtans as super-ascetic science. I understood it, but I didn't understand the mechanics of how these kirtanias could create such a transformation experience, That experience for me was just like opening my eyes and understanding what kirtan is. And, I've read this Baba quote. I think it's Baba's quote is saying kirtan is the best because it takes you to this, it makes you lost, completely lost. And I had experienced that in kirtan, but this was something on another level. So then I went back to do my doctorate in kirtan. And it was difficult to get permission to get approval to do that as well, because again, no one really thought that there was much substance to it. But once I'd been there for a short trip and come back and showed them some of my footage, they were absolutely blown away. But I just wanted to read a beautiful quote that Baba, I want to talk about some definitions of Baba and just some fundamentals about kirtan. which I think is it's nice to remind ourselves of these things. So Baba says, one of the books that I love to read, one of my favourite books is this one. It's Ra, the Cradle of Civilization. And there's lots of wonderful discourses in that book. And this is the other one that I also really love. It's Sangeet, song, dance and instrumental music. A lot of inspiration comes from these two books. So in this book on Ra, Baba gives the definition of Kirtan as the development of the rhythmic movement of the human mind in quest of the supreme entity. And he goes on to say that Kirtan is prevalent in India and many countries. The distinguishing feature of Kirtan of Ra is that it is chiefly, if not entirely, based on Baal, which means that it's more concerned with the sweet devotional ideation on Parampurusha rather than descriptions of his hand, feet, etc., eyes and face. So in that, this definition, Baba's talking about Kirtan as a genre, as a song genre. He's talking about Pada Kirtan. And for example, the song that Baba wrote in Prabhat Sangeet, Amijita Kirtakai, as a kirtan of that sort. And I have a PowerPoint here, but I'm not going to go to it. But you know that Amijita Kirtakai is a description of, devotional sentiment towards the Supreme. And then the other definition Baba gives, he says that kirtan is samgeet. So samgeeta in the sense that which is song, instrumental music and dance. I think that's really important to remember that because you know how high we get when we hear all the instruments playing together, when there's guitar, when there's violin, for example, when there's flute, when there's drum. The instrumental music side of it, of kirtan, is very uplifting, it's very inspiring. And Baba talks about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who invented Nama Kirtan, how he also really encouraged these three things. And he said that the lyrics of the song should directly reflect Parampurusha himself. Again, Baba's talking about Pada Kirtan here, talking about the Kirtan songs. And Baba goes on to say that the Kirtan of Ra is not merely samgeet, song, dance and instrumental music. It sways the finite human mind with the vibration of the unlimited and the infinite. Hence, it is outstanding and unparalleled. In other words, Baba's saying that he's saying that Rara Kirtan, he says, outstanding and unparalleled, and I think he's talking about, this is one Kirtan tradition that really has a lot to offer us. Kirtan in the West is a relatively new genre, but in India it's very ancient, and the Kirtan tradition of Ra is at least is more than 1,000 years old, because the oldest renowned Kirtan poem is Jayadev's Kirtan poem, which is around 1100. So it's very old. It's very inspiring. And then Baba talks about Kirtan. Third definition is that Baba says it's a supra ascetic science. Now that's something, it's very hard to define, and it's something that took me, I suppose, at least 5 years in the field doing field work in Ra to really intuitively get. And in fact, it wasn't until after my Viva, which is the oral presentation when you're doing your PhD, and it wasn't until after that everything fell into place for me. And then I realised, wow, I really need to go back and rewrite my PhD. So, because things suddenly just clicked into place. Because there's three aspects to that definition, and there's the science aspect of it. And Baba talks about the science of the instrumental music, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And he talks about the aesthetics of Kirtan, and he also talks about the supra side of it, the transformational side of Kirtan. He talks about that as well. He talks about, he says, Kirtan composed according to Nandana Vijnana, or ascetic science, which is the giving of joy to others and getting joy from others, induces in a person the tactual perception of Mohana Vijnana, or supra-ascetic science, by which the Supreme draws the microcosms closer to himself through different inferential attractions and irresistible charms. So Baba's actually saying here that Keaton composed according to Nanda Vijnana is the ascetic science. And he talks more about ascetics, and he says that, for example, the ascetics, and he talks about how when we can have flowers and we can throw them on the floor, or we can pick them up and we can make a beautiful arrangement. And it's also true with the music, the kirtan music, because when we make beautiful arrangements, when we have different things coming in the kirtan to make it more interesting, perhaps we have a beautiful melody and then we bring in a nice a rhythmic pattern, and then we bring in some cymbal patterns, or then we maybe bring in some beautiful a violin part, for example. This is a beautiful arrangement. This is the aesthetics of kirtan. So Baba's talking about the aesthetics, and that and being aware of that kind of subtle aspect of kirtan leads us towards Mahana Vijnana, which is that sense, which is that experience of being lost in kirtan and being drawn, actually as if the kirtan is singing us. It's not that we're singing the kirtan, but Baba is singing through us. The kirtan is coming through us, and not the other way around. So, yeah, as Baba says, that is about becoming completely absorbed in him. He talks about, he says, I don't, for example, Raganuka Bhakti is when the devotee desires the experience of Krishna's love. He talks about, I don't want to be sugar, I want to taste sugar. But then the last, which is Raga Meka Samadhi, or absolute absorption, is when there is this feeling, well, one is merged into that supreme consciousness. So that, I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about instrumentation. So the history of kirtan, as I said in Ra, it's ancient, and it goes back at least 1,000 years, if not further, because Baba's talking about the Baals, or the mystic songs of the Baals from Ra. And as I said, the first kirtan song is documented around 1400, is around 1100s. And then Baba talks about the Chandidasas, and there's 3 of them, and how they composed these beautiful kirtan songs, which were played in different rags. We don't know what those rags sounded like now, but they were from those past days. And then he talked about Narottama Das, who was a great kirtan composer around the 1600s, and how he transformed kirtan. And he was classically trained kirtania, and he many of the songs they sing in Ra today, and many of the melodies, they say they come from Narottama Das. They've travelled down through the ages, and they're singing those songs. Certainly the kirtan groups that I know sing a lot of Narottama Das's songs, and then they put those songs into kirtans. Baba goes on to say about Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he talks about how, and this is a lot of the people that I speak to, the kirtan experts in Ra say the same thing, that when Chaitanya came to Ra, the kirtan was already very developed, and Chaitanya, he loved it actually, and Baba quotes him. He says, Rari Shuri, Rari Bole, Rari Akara Kirtana Karibo, which means to the tunes of Ra, and in the speech of Ra, and with the words of Ra, with the lyrics of Ra, I shall sing kirtan. So I think Baba here is acknowledging the beauty and the depth of the Ra kirtan culture. I just want to talk a little bit about the instrumentation. So in kirtan instrumentation, traditionally the Rari kirtan it's reported during Chaitanya's time. The traditional kirtan ensemble consisted of the kol drum, which is this, and the kato, or the cymbals, and as well as that, there was the dancers. So the dancers are a very important aspect of the ensemble, and there's lots of quotes about Chaitanya falling into samadhi and having all kinds of occult symptoms. So the instrumentation these days. Baba had, I remember I was in Nandanagar one time, and I was standing there, we're standing at Baba's gate in Nandanagar. Aruna was there as well, and we talked about this when we met one time in Copenhagen. And at that time Baba came up and we were singing kirtan, and he just said this simple sentence like, use local instruments. He said, use local instruments. And at the time I was playing guitar, of course, and there wasn't a harmonium to be seen, but I just really appreciated, I love that what Baba said. And I do feel like, okay, some people have the cold drum, some people don't. But if we use local instruments, it's very attractive, it's very inspiring, not only to us, but also to the local people hearing that kind of music. So, for example, in Ireland, we can have the fiddle, we can have the pipes, we can have the bodhran, and the harp, of course. We can have the harp as well. And people listening to that kind of kirtan, you know, locally listening to that kind of kirtan will absolutely just love it. You know, they'll love that that we play with the local instruments. I just wanted to encourage people to play your local instruments when you're doing kirtan, especially if it's a public kirtan, because it's going to be very inspiring for other people. So the other thing I wanted to talk briefly about is the kirtan dance, which is also very important. Just to go back a little bit here about the kirtan, the instrumentation. I mean, we all know that how nice it is when we have a drummer playing with us who is tuning into the singer and playing together. And we also know how difficult it is when a person playing kirtan, playing the drum, for example, is in their own flow and not really listening to the singer, how difficult that can be. Because we really need to be able to work together. And, you know, it's not that just Baba does mention the mridangam as the instrument for kirtan, but it's not the only instrument that can be played. It's just basically the sound of the khol is very beautiful, because you've got the high sound, and then you've got the low sound. And I remember Dada Tatavedananda saying to me when we visited him in Ananda Nagar that he said that the high sound of the khol resonates with the Sahasrara chakra, whereas the low sound resonates with the Anahat chakra. I don't know if Baba said that, but this is what he was saying, that certainly it has a very uplifting effect, as we need to be careful when we have percussion, that it doesn't overwhelm the singers, because of course it's very important to be able to hear the mantra clearly, be able to hear the tune clearly. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that. I think everyone's pretty much aware of that. So one thing also I wanted to talk about was the dance. As Baba says, it's not song, it's just chant, instrumental music, it's also dance. So when I was a young Māori, I remember someone telling me that you should start kirtan with the right foot. I remember that, but it was a very long time ago, and as things goes, you know, sometimes we focus on different things that we hear, and then we just forget them and we carry on, and then we remember them at some later stage. But I remember it became very, it just became not an issue, for a very important aspect, significant aspect of the kirtan for me, when I was especially observing the Rari kirtanis and how they dance. You know, it's very rare that you'll see someone who's stepping in their own rhythm. 99% of the time you see them, they're stepping together. And observing that, and observing our own kirtans, and seeing, well, sometimes we have the most beautiful melody, but when the dancers when we're dancing ad hoc, or some are dancing in rhythm and some are not, it's difficult to really raise the kirtan, even if the melody is absolutely gorgeous. So I think it's sort of struck me again to really work on this, and I researched it, and I observed it, and I noticed that, as with so many kirtan asanas, for example, kaushiki, they do start with the right foot, and it is very helpful when we do start with that foot. And then obviously it's hard to know, well, when do we actually start with the right foot? I was told it's on the first baba, but you know, it depends on the actual kirtan, because what we really need to think about, and I feel like this is the prime responsibility of the kirtan leaders, is that it actually, the right foot goes down starts behind, you know, taps behind the other left foot on the first beat of the bar. So depending on which kirtan tune that is, it could be baba, it could be nam. For example, on Amijira Kera Kai, that's quite easy. It's like the right foot is Baba, Baba Namo Kevalam, Baba Namo Kevalam, Baba Namo Kevalam, Baba Namo Kevalam, Baba Nam. And why is that? Because Nam is the first strong beat. It's the first beat of the musical bar. It's the first beat. The baba nam, so baba nam kiva lam, baba nam kiva lam, baba nam kiva lam, baba nam kiva lam. And that's that Prabhat Sangeet is really great to turn into a baba nam kiva lam kirtan, because it is a kirtan tune. It's the Prabhat Sangeet kirtan tune. Then there's other tunes that we have. Our own tunes, for example, and for example, let's try this one, Lily in the Moon. It's on the nam. Baba nam. That's the first strong beat of the musical phrase. The anacrusis, the upbeat is baba. Baba nam kevalam. So it's not simple. It depends on the melody. Also, the other tune, for example, everyone loves to sing Tiny Green Island. Love to sing that one. And when it comes to Prabhat Sangeet, I think it's really important to try to keep the rhythm of the actual Prabhat Sangeet song within the kirtan. Try to keep the same rhythm as much as possible, because Baba has written that song in that particular way, with those particular rhythms. And sometimes, therefore, it's a little bit tricky. So, because it goes, I love this tiny green island, Baba nam kevalam, Baba nam kevalam. People say, oh, some people go, Baba nam, but I prefer to go, I love Baba nam, keeping the rhythm of the Prabhat Sangeet song intact. This is how I do it. I like to do that. Same with the songs. Baba's talking before about pada kirtans. He's talking about song kirtans, songs that describe the qualities of the divine, that directly reflect Parampurusha. So when one writes a song about Baba, that song then can get turned into a Baba Nam Kevalam Kirtan. So it's a kirtan song that gets turned into a Nama Kirtan chant. For example, Lily in the Moon. Open my eyes, I look at you, I see myself melt to a pool. What can I see? What can I do? You pull on strings I can't undo, and it's only the moonlight, and it's only the moonlight that keeps us strong. We carry on, thinking of one. Baba Nam Kevalam, 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 Baba Nam Kevalam. So that kirtan came directly from the song. And another one, for example, this is I write these songs so that I can remember my experiences of Baba. So this one, first time. I loved you since we first met. I know shorter song that goes into a kirtan. Oh, what's happening here? Here we go. Wonderful, oh so wonderful, like the ocean, you're my harbor, so mysterious and delightful. You're my shelter, you're my home. Bhavana Deva Namo, Bhava Namo, Deva Namo, Bhava Namo, Deva Namo, Bhava Nam, Keva Nam. So, there's other songs. For example, "You Are Mine" is a song that just came to me complete one day when I was walking down the steps at Morley towards Morley College, and the song came, just all the words and the melody came at once, and so that song for me is a bit like a trademark for me. It just keeps reminding me that Baba's mine and no one else. It's basically a very deep devotional song, and then turning that into a kirtan was easy to do. Baba Nam, Baba Nam, Kevalam, 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 Baba Nam, Baba Nam, Kevalam. That comes from "You Are Mine and no one else's. You belong to me and nobody else." So I would like to talk a little bit about coordination. And one thing I noticed, which is really important, which is really significant, and really outstanding in Ra Kirtan, is just the coordination between the different members in the group. So in Ra, the Kirtan groups are village-based. And so, in a village, they say it's inauspicious not to have a Kirtan group. So nearly every Kirtan group in Ra has a Kirtan, in village in Ra has a Kirtan group. There's over 2,000, I think, 300 villages in Purulia alone. So that's how many Kirtan groups you have in Ra. And I know when we staged a Kirtan competition, we started that 3 years ago, we had well, we didn't have 2,000 groups, we had 50 odd groups coming to perform in that competition. So many amazing groups there. But the thing that really stood out was the coordination between the singer, the drummers, and the dancers, who are also the kato players, and how they interact with each other. So in Ra, the kirtan is incredibly dynamic, so they're basically going in a circle. It's not like standing and facing as one direction as we do often. It's basically a khanda kirtan. So they're working together, and it's not easy when you're going around in a circle. But the eye contact and everything's done without talking, of course. And it's very incredibly well rehearsed, even though there's a lot of spontaneity as well. But it's incredibly well rehearsed. And these kirtan groups practice most nights in the summer at least. Sometimes also throughout the year they practice every night. And because they're working out their dance movements, they're working out their rhythmic patterns, they're working out the melodies. And in Ra, what's interesting is that there's, as Baba talks about, there's different karanas, but the area that I was in was Purulia. So there's a sort of a central corpus of kirtan melodies which come from songs in Ra. And these melodies, if you want to enter into any competition, or even if you want to get invited to sing during a festival in a village, for example, because they have these summer festivals, nearly every village has these, then you need to know these particular melodies, these particular raginis, I suppose you'd call them. And I thought that's very interesting because, Daspita is one of those which you may have heard of. It's on the Red Earth Fusion CD, and there's quite a few of the rags on that album that are practiced, are sung in Ra. And that's interesting because I was thinking, what do we have similar in Western Kirtan? Ra Kirtan is, as I said, very developed. It's very old, and they've got this central corpus of rags, of songs and melodies that they would all know. So, for example, in a Western classical tradition, we would all probably, if you didn't know Mozart, if you didn't know Beethoven, you didn't know Bach, people wouldn't take you very seriously if you didn't know those composers. Same in Ra, if you didn't know Narottama Das and some of the other composers, some of the other kirtan poets, they wouldn't take you very seriously. You wouldn't be able to play in these festivals probably. You do need to know some set kirtan rags. And I was thinking that's very interesting. In future I'm sure that the Western kirtan tradition will be developing its own, as a genre will be developing, and it will have its own stock of, classical kirtan compositions, which we will carry on developing. I remember one time I was talking to Dada Priya Shivananda at that time when I was doing my masters. I would visit him as often as possible to learn some more Prabhat Sangeet, especially the Ra Prabhat Sangeets. And he said to me once that, he said to me that Baba had told him that at the moment these Prabhat Sangeet songs, they're very short, they're 3 minutes long. He said, but Baba has said that in the future these songs will be 45 minutes long at least. So what he's saying there, I feel, is that he's saying that these particular songs will be, there's the song, and the song doesn't change, the melody doesn't change, but the improvisation that goes on around it, and that melody maybe will be expanded upon, and so forth. Who knows what it's going to sound like in future, because we're at early days yet. But I thought that was very interesting, and that's how they develop the kirtans in Ra, as they take a particular song, and they develop that song so that they can perform kirtan to it, and they extend it, they they improvise on it. So there's a set melody, and then upon that melody there might be 3 or 4 other melodies that's improvised, coming from that central melody, and then coming from the chorus part, which they call the kirtan. That chorus part is played as a second section during the kirtan. So one kirtan will take around 25 to 30 minutes to sing in Ra. And the second section is the kirtan, which is the song chorus, which has been turned into Haribol. They're singing Haribol. And then they put this incredible drum improvisation there, which is not, it sounds very random, but it's actually not, it's actually pre-composed. So that's how I think our kirtans in the future will develop. We'll have songs that will develop, there'll be improvisations on that particular melody, and then there may be, you know, who knows, it could be incredible drum improvisation on that. And, you know, these things are just things that will happen in the future. But at the moment, I feel like we've been so gifted to have been here when Baba has been alive physically and soon after. And we have a huge stock of incredible melodies that are there and that people are always composing. And we were ourselves develop as kirtan musicians. We will also develop our skills as kirtan composers. And I thought it was very interesting, like Narottama Das, for example, who was a classically trained musician who decided to devote his life to kirtan, because it's so incredibly nurturing, you know, it's spiritually, I mean, music is very uplifting. Music that is an aesthetic science is incredibly uplifting, but when you add, of course, something that is totally like reflecting Parampurusha, or is just directly saying his name, then there's nothing more divine, there's nothing more ecstatic than that we can perform, that we have. So I would like to share some kirtans now, and also if people have any questions, please just put them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them. The one kirtan I can share is one I wrote here at the farm. This kirtan just came in a dream. I mean, sometimes for me kirtans come in a dream, they really do, or they come in my mind when I wake up, and sometimes they come when I'm playing the guitar and I find some beautiful chord arrangements, or some subtle kind of different chords, and sometimes in a dream, and sometimes the kirtans come spontaneously, like walking, as I said with Your Mind, just came as complete. But this kirtan came when Didi was away in Haiti at the time, doing service work there, and her beloved dog Grace was very unwell. And before she got unwell, this kirtan tune kept coming into my mind. And then Gracie became very sick, and then Gracie passed away. And as Grace was passing away, we were a small group of us, and we were singing this kirtan tune to her. And I felt like Baba gave me this tune, not just for Grace, but for Didi Nandaprama, because that was her beloved dog, and I knew that it was going to hurt when she heard about it. So. And then after this kirtan tune came, it just then I put the words to it later, afterwards. It goes like this. Baba, Baba Nama Kevalam, Baba Nam Kevalam, Baba Nama Kevalam, Baba Nam Kevalam, Baba Nama Kevalam, Baba Nam Kevalam. Baba Nama Kevalam. one thing I wanted to mention was when we're in public, we're doing public kirtan. So when we have a public kirtan, sometimes there's this, people feel this pressure that they need to be singing other kirtans like Haribolo or Shiva kirtan, for example. But for me, I feel like, I want to sing Bhavanam Kevalam basically. If I'm at a public kirtan and I sing, but if I'm at a public kirtan and I'm singing all Bhavanam Kevalam, I love to do that, but other people are wondering, well, what's happening. One of the things I did to get around that was in these kinds of situations, in these, like having a kirtan concert, for example, I would sing, for example, I put Ananda Sutram to music, and I put it in a kirtan style. So, for example, I'm at a kirtan, I'm giving a kirtan concert, and I would sing, for example, Shiva Shakti Atmakam Brahma, and I'd sing it in a kirtan style, so that people think, okay, this is a kirtan concert, that's a kirtan, but actually I'm singing Ananda Sutram, but in a similar call and response style. So that's one of the ways that I got around that, because a lot of people still don't understand that kirtan is not just chanting, but it's also songs. It's songs. So, if you're wanting to give a kirtan concert, you can say, okay, this is a kirtan song, and then go into a Bhavanam Kevalam at the end, or as I do, I might sing Ananda Sutram and do it as a call and response. That's just something that, I like to do. I'm not sure how much time I've got. 2 minutes of time, dear? 10 minutes. Okay, great. Here's another kirtan which came from a song as well. Song that I turned into a Bhavanam Kevalam, and maybe I'd like to talk about, just tell a Baba story. But before I do that, I would like to share with you a Arari Kirtan, which is on YouTube. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. What I'll do is I'll put it on my computer here. So this is a very short video of some of the kirtan from. Hopefully you can see that from Ra. this is the last competition this is the 2016 Keaton competition, and these are some of the Keatanians. Hopefully you can see that. Can you see it? I just wanted to say that I do have a channel on YouTube. It's called Joshna channel, and on that channel you'll find some videos of Rari Keaton there. And I also wanted to say that I have a Keaton booklet, Keaton guitar booklet, and it's just called Keaton Guitar, and it's free at the moment. If you want to go onto Amazon and just look up Keaton Guitar, it's the only Keaton guitar book on Amazon, and you can download it for free. It's going on for another 3 days, I think. So if you want a copy of this e-version of it, it's free on Amazon. And if you want a physical copy of it, just email me and I'll send it to you. You can have that for free. That's also free. You just could provide the postage costs. That would be great otherwise. And yeah, that's free. So if you'd like a copy of that, just let me know. Just email me. And yeah, and as I said, I'm going to be starting a course. I'm going to do it in Underbarati in the near future, a Keaton course where we will really look into some depth into very practical aspects of the Keaton, the melodies, the rhythms, the coordination, and all of that, you know, really practical stuff. And also learning about the history, learning about the learning some of the Rari Keatons as well, and then as well composing our own and developing those as well. So I think my time is up, 3 minutes. If anybody's got a question, please just write to me. And yeah, I'll leave my email address. I don't know where I'll leave it. Anyway, my email address is joshnatribe@gmail.com. That's JOSNALATROBE@gmail.com. Just email me if you'd like a free copy of the book. And I don't see any questions, but I'll just finish with the Keaton. Let me see which one is good for the ending. Oh, how about Amijeta Geta Kai, Baba's Keaton tune. Baba namo kevalam, Baba namo kevalam, Baba namo kevalam, Namaskar.